Tonight, we'll introduce you to a couple of great young entrepreneurs. We'll get an update from Paul Rice, but we'll begin with a conversation about the Bridge Center for Hope. Roll it, Kyle. Very excited to be back with you again, and we've got a number of topics that I think you'll enjoy. We're going to begin tonight with a conversation with Charlotte Claiborne, who is the Executive Director of the Bridge Center for Hope here in East Baton Rouge Parish, dealing with people who are having issues with mental health and anxiety. And this is kind of interesting because there are things that I can ask you about, things that I can't ask you about, things you can talk about, things you can't. So let's just try to navigate these waters. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So for people who are unaware or who are new here, what is the Bridge Center for Hope?
So, to clarify that, the Bridge Center for Hope is a crisis stabilization center for mental health and substance use.
Okay.
It's designed to be two things. One, an alternative to the emergency departments, so that it can relieve some of the pressure that our local emergency rooms have, so they can treat the more serious illnesses. And then it's also a diversion for law enforcement and for EMS. So someone is encountering someone that's having a mental health or a substance use crisis, that is a law enforcement person or an EMS official, they can bring them to the Bridge Center for Hope.
Let's talk about the impact that a center like this has on a community. What's the return on investment for the people of East Baton Rouge Parish having the Bridge Center here?
So when we talk about return on investments, a lot of people think about dollars and cents, but what I'm going to count it is in terms of people.
Yep.
Since the facility opened roughly February the 11th, 2021, we have seen over 6,000 individuals at our facility.
Wow.
We had a 35% increase between 2021 and 2022.
Wow.
Yes.
To what do you attribute that? Is that the COVID year or the increase?
No, because if you look at the number of psychiatric admissions at the hospital level, those numbers have continually rose every single year since 2012. I think we had a peak in 2016. I know we had a lot of significant crises that happened in our parish during that time, but it really hasn't dialed down too much since then. COVID did play a role in it, but we're just now seeing what that implications have, because people are now trying to acclimate themselves back to their everyday lives, and they're just having anxiety and other issues. And a lot of people forget that during COVID, we lost over 1 million and something people.
Yep.
So that's that number that nobody really talks about. And so people are dealing with grief and everything else and still trying to cope.
You know, I have friends who lost parents and could not have what we would consider traditional funerals or burial services. So they never got the regular closure that we get when we lose a loved one. And there's so many, I'm going to drill down into some of the mental health wins that we've seen across our country lately, because more people are talking about it. Some of the stigmas are going away, but there's still some hills we have yet to climb. What are some things about the Bridge Center that you can share for people who in their own personal circles may have someone who has been in crisis or who's on the bubble? I know that's sensitive, but because we're not talking any specific person, how could the average person here use your facility? So
one of the things that I try to tell people when I go out and I speak in public, the easiest way for me to characterize the Bridge Center for Hope is that I tell people, remember a long time ago we had like 1 or 2 urgent care facilities and no one really knew what that was, and they still went to the emergency rooms. And so as time passed, they started seeing more and more urgent care facilities, and people, instead of going to the hospital, they'll go there. The Bridge Center is just like an urgent care facility, but we're urgent care for your mind. We only specialize in mental health and substance use. We designed the facility to not have any barriers for someone to access it, meaning that the only criteria that you have is that you have to be 18 years and above. So we operate almost identical to that of an emergency room, except for the fact that we only specialize in those 2 areas. So I tell the public this: if you're having a crisis, and the thing about crisis is it looks different on everyone. What I'm going through may not affect you the same way. So we can't really define what a crisis is for individuals, but what we tell them is that when you come to the facility, we will meet you where you are. The other characteristic about the Bridge Center that differs from a local emergency department is that we do a crisis now, which means that person is immediately seen, because we, again, only operate in those 2 areas. So instead of having to go and wait, there is no wait at our facility. We have what we call a no wrong door policy, meaning you can come in through the front door, or you can be escorted by law enforcement or first responders through the back door. They have their own separate entrance. And we did that because one of the things that we wanted them to do was to be able to access the facility and then go back on their duty. Right now, their average handle time is really 3 minutes.
Look, I want to come back and talk a bit more about the center and ask about how it's been embraced here in the community, and then drill down, like we talked about some of the wins that we've seen as it relates to stigmas of mental health, and then some areas that we still have yet to cover. Most recently here this week in Louisville, Kentucky, a young man's dealing with some kind of crisis that ended up in another mass shooting. So we'll come back and talk more with Charlotte Claiborne about the Bridge Center for Hope, and later on we'll introduce you to some young business people. Stay right there. So I referenced going into break about the mass shooting earlier this week in Louisville, Kentucky, with a young man who was a former bank employee. He was actually a current bank employee. He had been informed that he was going to be let go. He purchased an AR and then went back to the bank on Monday, the day after Easter, and killed some people there and wounded others. And it's being widely discussed now that he was dealing with some kind of mental issue. So I wanted to talk about that. Let's begin with the wins. I find that more and more people are comfortable talking about needing help or having gotten help as it relates to some kind of mental issue.
Yeah.
That is a great thing for society. So let's talk about that.
I think that's a generational thing.
Okay.
I say that because the generation now is okay to say, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
No, growing up when I was younger, it was suck it up.
Oh, no, shut up, boy. Deal with it. Toughen up.
Stop crying.
Yeah.
Dry your eyes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
before that, I'm sure it was some level of that,
Right.
or to a higher level.
Right.
So I think with generations, is making it more prevalent to say, I am not okay, and I'm okay with talking about it, I'm okay with expressing it. Then we also have social media. So people are able to tell their truths right then and there and not have to wait on anyone, and people can reach out to them. So it's that immediate response. I think that's a win.
So let's talk about some areas where there are still areas where we can grow. What are those areas?
Those areas, I think there's still a stigma centered around mental health. I think that starts from when back in the early 60s and the 50s, you were institutionalized. And so people just assume that that person's just crazy and can't do anything. And then you start looking at that word crazy. And then what does that mean for you, and what does that mean for me? And we lump all of these mental health issues into one bucket, and there's so many different ones.
Right.
So,
and these kids are dealing with so much pressure, and social media does add to that, because so many of them get their self-worth from the way they're perceived on social, which is dangerous in its own way. Would you give any advice to parents or people watching about maybe things that you should encourage early on as your kids use social media to maybe head it off at the pass?
So there's a number of things, and you have psychologists that talks about things. I find that I listen to celebrities talk about how they don't let their children get on social media just because of the nature.
Or so they know.
So they know. I think parents, have to monitor it. Giving your child an iPad at 3 is gonna start. It's gonna start something. I mean, but you can monitor what you put them on there. That's why they have parental controls.
Right. All right, so what are, in the last couple minutes, let's talk about some things people should know about the Bridge Center for Hope and how they can get involved in supporting what you do there.
So the one misconception that I get a lot of times is that a lot of people thought the Bridge Center for Hope was for the homeless population, and that is a myth. The fact of the reality is the Bridge Center for Hope is a mental health facility that is designed to help anyone over the age of 18 and above. So that may include someone who's homeless, but it also includes everyone else. We've served people who have a lot of money that are extremely wealthy, and we've served people who have nothing. I think people need to understand that crisis doesn't have a face. Mental health doesn't have a face, and it doesn't have a respective person. So it can happen, and anyone can need services regardless of your demographic.
I love that, and I love the conversation. Next month, we're going to talk more about this because it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and maybe we can address some of the misconceptions about it, and also make people aware of resources here that they may not even know about. Yes. One of the big stories involved a lady who had water thrown on her earlier this year, and I learned a lot in my conversation with Tanja Miles.
Yes.
she's an encyclopedia
Yes,
about
yes.
so many subjects. Well, thank you. So you'll be back next month. So I'll see you in maybe 3 weeks.
Okay.
All right. So Paul Rice is here. We're going to talk with Paul about the Live Like Allie Foundation. He and I will also chat about Devon's Law, something that was just recently done as there was an event this week. And then later on, I'm going to introduce you to some young ladies that I know they're going to be in the money. I just need to get contact with them right now so they can remember me back in just a moment. Paul Rice is back. Paul is a regular here now, father of Allie Rice. We've talked a lot about that here on the show. He brought back some bracelets and a t-shirt. You don't even know what it took to just get a simple t-shirt. That's a whole conversation for another day. But man, we'll get into, how you've been, but let's talk a little bit about Kathy Tolliver, because earlier this week she had an event downtown marking the 1-year anniversary of Devon Page's murder, her grandson, and got together to talk about that. And then Devon's Law was passed this week, and that deals with people who are renting properties in areas where there is violence, like Devon's mother, who had been trying to get out of that space for a long time and had been denied and threatened and everything. And unfortunately, we ended up losing this 3-year-old Angel to some gun violence. And Kathy is a force. So let's spend some time loving on Kathy before we get into what's going on with you right now.
Kathy is amazing. She motivates me, and sometimes I feel I'm unmotivatable, but she's very inspirational. She practices what she preaches. She's out there working hard every day. She's pounding the pavement and getting her words out.
Her thing is help 5 stay alive, which is, 5 people in your circle who may be dealing with some issue, talk to them, engage them, help 5 stay alive.
You have to go find her dance video to that too.
Oh, so I'm going to play that the next time she was here. We were together at the Goodwood Library for an event, and she has an entire music video. Does that surprise you, though?
Not at all.
Not at all. Hey, you learned a good lesson. Never follow her when she speaks. Don't go behind Kathy. So the Live Like Allie Foundation, many people have heard about it, but if someone has not heard about it, let's tell them what it is.
So we wanted to commit to promoting Allie's positivity, not necessarily the violent end of her, but we hear so many stories still to this day, 6 months later, about the impact that she had on people's lives and the energy that she brought into the room, and just the way that she was there for her friends, and just an all-around great person. So the yellow promotes the brightness, that she represented, but we also want to encourage people to live in the way that she did, to be vocal, to be energetic, to just be there for her friends and family, and just be a loving person.
I look forward to the day that I can take the pictures of that young woman and that young man off the set. I mean, we said to Paul and Kathy when you guys were first on that we were going to keep those pictures up so that people would not forget them. Now they are the namesake of a camera initiative here in Baton Rouge called the Page Rice Camera Initiative, where we have placed cameras across Baton Rouge tied to both the sheriff's office and the police department. And I don't know if we've spoken since we did this, but the Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice Foundation allocated another $15,000 for cameras in Tigerland. The camera near where Allie was murdered is going up as we speak.
Awesome.
I was in a meeting with the guy behind Project NOLA last week, and then of course there's the one at Triple S. We encourage people to support this initiative because it is partially a deterrent, because people typically don't like to commit crimes in front of cameras where they can be caught easier. And then it's also an assist to law enforcement to catch the people who perpetrate these crimes. And so
they are our witnesses.
You can go to brcollab.com and learn how you can either receive a camera, sponsor a camera, or buy one for yourself. And we want to use technology to help with this. In the last couple of minutes, let's talk about the impact that this has had on the community with some of the work that you've done, because you have become an activist, speaking against gun violence, violent crime, and also touching other families who've gone through it. Tell me how that's been.
It's definitely been a change in my life, as far as direction and everything. I never considered myself a political person. kind of sat back in the shadows and watched things, but I've actually spent a lot of time getting involved. I've been very involved with the judges race that's going on right now. I've spent a lot of time talking to one candidate in particular, and actually shot a commercial for him. Been involved with Attorney General Jeff Landry, who's taken his time out of his schedule to sit down with our family and talk about things. He's invited us to press conferences down in New Orleans to announce the Truth and Transparency Bill, which is set to expose.
Quickly tell people what that is. What's the Truth and Transparency?
The Truth and Transparency Bill is for collecting court data from East Baton Rouge, New Orleans area, and Caddo Parish up around Shreveport, where they're tracking judges' decisions, tracking the release of prisoners, or when people are bonding out and all that, to help the families know when these violent people are back out on the streets, potentially out to terrorize them again or whatever. It's for their own protection.
The chief has said it's not everybody, it's just some of the same bad actors over and over and over and over again. All right, I got 30 seconds. How can people learn more about the Live Like Allie Foundation?
Right now, we're still working on our website, but we do have a Facebook page.
I know a guy.
Live Like Allie. And
one of these right here.
We try to continue to pay tributes and let the public know what we're working on. Camera initiative, different things like that.
Well, brother, you're always welcome. When next time Kathy comes back, you got to come with her.
Absolutely.
I just want to ask you to speak behind her. Let's talk business next. So a few weeks ago, the Young Entrepreneurs Academy had an event at LSU, and I was honored enough to be the MC for the event. And wow, the ideas, the youth, the intellect, it was fantastic. So I had to come here and talk about it to let y'all in on it. And I've got two of the young bosses here with me right now, Jaslyn Johnson, Elena Banks, both young entrepreneurs. Let's see, Elena was a part of, her company was Boldly Braided, and Jaslyn was Simplistic Beauty. Did I get that right? Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the event and why you guys wanted to be young entrepreneurs, business people, the whole nine.
Okay, so in the 10th grade, my sophomore year, I started my own business. Before I joined the class, I was selling bath bombs, lip gloss, and sugar scrubs.
Okay.
And I wanted to take it a step further, and I wanted to join like a business class. So I talked to my big buddy, Miss Jennifer, and through Big Buddy, they connected me to YEA.
Okay.
For me, my grandmother and aunt, they used to do me and my sister's hair a lot. So like watching them do hair was like kind of fun. So then I started learning. So then as a hobby, I'd braid my baby brother's hair and plait my father's hair. And it led to like wanting to have my business, open it through one of the teachers at my school. She introduced us to the YEA program.
What's the best lesson you learned going through the process?
The best lesson I learned was that I have bad time management skills. So I'm working on that, and
okay.
I now know that it is better for me to have a schedule during the week than to just do things off the top of my head.
That's right, yeah.
Yes.
I think same, because now it's like a set schedule on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Like we focus on our business and YEA, and then for the rest of the week we have regular school or regular work if that's included. Mm-hmm. So time management and like better, just having that set schedule was like important.
A schedule and a game plan are both for your own protection. It keeps things on your calendar that are necessary, and it keeps things off your calendar that is necessary. So I'll tell you something else about being a business owner. You hear this all the time. You get to be your own boss,
Yes.
right? That's a lie. When you own the company, everybody's your boss. Every customer is your boss, right? When people work for you, you're the only one. But everybody who's buying your service or product, they're your boss, right? So that's, okay, let's talk about something that you didn't expect you would learn about business or being a business owner that you learned going through this great process.
I don't think, like when I came in, I thought it would be like a regular class. I didn't think like meeting the entrepreneurs and hearing their stories. I think one of the most valuable things that we've learned is to like build bonds and relations with our customers and employees, because they represent you and your service or business. So letting them leave out, they have to have a good impression, like you want to impress them and have a bond with them so they come back and refer like tell others about your service or business. I think that was like one of the most important lessons.
Same question.
Yes, and can you re-ask the question?
So just something you learned from this, that going through this?
Okay, so what I've learned was that there's always a story behind something. And whether you know the details or not, there's a meaning and there's a reason. And sometimes when you find out the reason, it pulls you in. It tells the story and tells you, well, this is important to someone. It might not be important to me, but it's important to a bunch of people.
What would you give to your peer group as young people as encouragement to follow their dreams? Because there are a number of people who have ideas and things that they think would work, but either they don't think people would like it, they think it's crazy, they don't think anybody would support them. How would you encourage your peer group to just go and try?
You know the Nike saying, just do it?
Just do it?
I'd say just do it, because honestly, you don't necessarily have to impress everyone. Like,
Right.
as long as you're happy with what you have, you don't have to start off with like a huge fan group. You can start small and just work your way up. Technically, like how we're doing now in the YA program. So honestly, just do it.
Now, what did you bring here with you today?
I brought 2 of our test products, Magnolia Dream and Gulf Coast Breeze.
So now, what are these? These are like
Perfumes.
oh,
yes.
perfumes.
Yes.
Okay.
Smell good.
All right.
So
I was going to say
they
on the
are for sensitive skin.
okay. I was going to say
And-
on the braided side, I don't think I qualify. Oh wow.
Yes, that is actually my favorite. That's Magnolia. That's Gulf Coast Breeze and Magnolia Dream, and we have the top labeled so you can tell the difference. Most people like that.
Wow. I got something for you,
And then
Scott.
I
Kyle.
got you my business card with our Instagram at the bottom.
There you go.
Yes.
What's your IG handle?
My IG handle.
Instagram handle. What is it?
_simplisticbeauty_.
All right. You guys, so listen, Young Entrepreneurs Academy, I encourage you to look it up if you had not. It gives young people a fantastic opportunity to be their best selves. They do these elevator pitches. The event is fantastic. My good friend Deborah Sternberg has already told me that I'm going to be back next year as the MC. I'm ready for it. Let's do it. Y'all keep up the good work. I told a young man this last week. In terms of competing in life, the only guarantee is not competing or quitting. You lose. But if you try, you always have a chance to win. So good luck to y'all, all right? We'll see you next week. You guys stay out of trouble. Enjoy whatever this weather will be, and we'll see you next week on WBRZ Plus.